From sunny Southern California, we bring you Meet Bridget, a podcast for building confident communication and female badassery. We spotlight women who have bridged the gaps in their lives by building strong relationships and speaking their teenage dreams into reality.
Bring it on, baby!
People are feeling sad. They're feeling lonely. They need a smile when they show up.
All right, ladies, let's play ball.
So welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold young adult and teenage stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show has been an extension of our confidence coaching service for women. I'm Keshiia Rosenberg, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend and Meet Bridget founder, Asha Gabriel. It's wild, but we are currently recording season 5 of our Meet Bridget podcast, which is really cool. It's been a huge labor of love. We get to bring on really incredible guests and learn and share our learnings and just continue to build this incredible community of women. We're in the business of sharing unique perspectives and the myriad of different journeys that each of our successful female guests has taken, how they've grown through and in spite of and because of their life experiences. Today, I am bringing an absolute powerhouse to our show. Debra Strougo is a woman whose bio is exemplary of the sky's the limit. She's a multi-brand founder. She founded Row House, FITIZENS Holdings, and more. She helps other founders grow their dreams through Founders Co-Pilot, which provides growth services. And she's an she's an advisor and investor and probably also an angel. And above all other titles, a mom. Mostly focused on the health and wellness space, Debra has taken her vast knowledge and skill set to create a life in which her passions inform her profession and not the other way around. With 3 kids, multiple brands, and projects on her plate, Debra has learned to balance it all so beautifully. So I am so excited to bring you onto the show and to learn more about your journey. Welcome.
Well, thank you. That's a very nice introduction, and I hope to live up to it.
Yes, well, you lived it. So you lived it. We're so excited. So I really want to dive in. As you may know, we love to start our interviews with learning a little bit more about each person's background. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about where you're from and where you got started.
Sure, yes. So I am from New York City, born and raised in the concrete jungle of Manhattan, which was a great upbringing. But now I'm living here in Newport Beach, California for the past couple of years, had a big transition during COVID. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's funny because growing up in New York City, you spend a lot of time kind of like inside, not as many sports, those types of things. And now here I am in this culture where everything is just outside and hiking and surfing and all of these types of things.
Yeah,
so
blue skies behind you.
Yes, in December. So it's been really, really nice.
Very cool. Did you grow up with siblings? Were you an active child? Like, I'd love to hear more about like young Debra.
Yes. Okay. So I grew up with a little brother, 2.5 years younger. Fun kid, but we joke about how he would like run around and try to lick my feet for some odd reason. I guess it was some sort of call for attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my father was always working. He was a big workaholic. And my mom stayed home. So she was kind of always there for us. We walked to school. Our elementary school was just down the block. And most of the kids were from the neighborhood. So even though I grew up with a very global kind of feel, like it was a large place, we lived certainly in a community where we knew the people that we, crossed on the streets and things like that. A lot of people can't imagine that growing up in New York City could be like that, but we kind of had our own little 5-block radius, and we had the park where all of the friends went. We had the pizza shop where all the friends went, the ice cream shop where all the friends went. And everybody lives in that pretty much close walking area. So it was really nice. Developed a lot of wonderful relationships. Our parents were all very close too, because naturally, they were around. Pretty much a lot of the moms were stay-at-home moms in that kind of time period, but also in that neighborhood. So we got to know a lot of the other parents, or at least a lot of the other moms, really well, which I really enjoyed. I think I was an observer of different personalities and different dynamics and interactions. So I grew to really kind of appreciate qualities in some of my friends' moms that were, I know I kind of adopted into my personality over the course of time. So that was really special for me. And some of those friends I'm still friends with today. So I'm kind of older, and I'm 46. And so my friends were my friends since 5. So like we're talking kindergarten. So 40-year friendships. Yeah.
I love that. There's so much that I can relate to here in terms of growing up in more of a city feel and just having like the local bodega and the kids that you can play with, and you just like go over to their house and you're inside, and in my memory, it's funny because I don't even remember, like, we didn't have cell phones. So it wasn't like I called my mom and I was like, hey, I'm going to be at Mikey's house. It's just like, that's what you did at that time. And it's really special because I don't think the world is like that anymore. We're so much more connected. So there's kind of this like swashbuckling freedom that we had when we were younger that I don't think this generation will ever really like fully understand.
Yeah. I mean, your curfew was your curfew, and your afternoon was determined before you left in the morning. Like there was a real plan. And you talked to your friends' parents if you called your friends on the phone too, because the cell phone didn't. So there was kind of like a layer of formality or expectation that really occurred. Like if I wanted to call my friends, hello, Mr. or Mrs. blah, blah, is blah, 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 available. Oh, how are you? Please tell your parents I say hello. Like that whole communications juncture almost doesn't happen with my kids now.
Yeah, that's actually such a great point. I have not thought about that in years, just that whole process of making a phone call like that. And it brings up a really good point because some of my, I work in a really busy medical practice now, and I talk to my colleagues, and there's a high-ish turnover rate of like the younger generation we've noticed. And we're trying to extract like what the differences were and like what qualities you want out of somebody that you want to work with and what's dependable. And it's really interesting you bring that up because one of the major qualities is, somebody that can interact respectfully and just there's a part of me and a part of some of my colleagues where we're like, why is it so hard for somebody to get? But you make such a good point. Like, we're growing up at a time now where when you talk to somebody, you probably already know them and you're speaking directly to them. And most people under a certain age have never really had to make a cold call before, talk to somebody's parent, which is like the first point of authority when you're younger. So you learn this whole etiquette that we don't necessarily have to teach now.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Really interesting. Also, just, it's a good point for the younger generation. Like, it's such a good skill to be able to have. The
confidence. I mean, definitely. I think that I had more of an ability to kind of like stand up and speak than I even knew I had at that time. And I even see it in my children. Like one of my sons is really totally confident to get up and to face anybody and look him in the eye and, just address whatever needs to be addressed. And then the littler one, and he's still littler, but still he's a little more shy and more feeble about, saying what he needs or asking a question or anything like that. But that also is growing up in a city environment. My older son did grow up in New York for a while and I think just like all the stimulation, all the people that you're surrounding with, the comings and goings, like the ask the question, which direction is that? Or somebody asks you, like, it's less of a routine environment. Almost, it's a lot more stimulation. And so you end up just kind of being able to navigate those things a little bit better than kinds of like the same, like we're going to get in the car, we're going to go to school, we're going to see the same people, we're going to do the same things, some of that routine. And the routine is nice, right? It creates wonderful innocence and all of those types of things. But I definitely see it in personality, in kind of like how it helped navigate my personality.
That adaptability feature, which is a theme I'm quickly starting to see arise. Like in my picture, in my mind's eye that I'm forming of you, I can see that adaptability is probably one of your early onset qualities. Were you very outgoing as a kid? Like, did it come naturally to you, or was it something that you felt like you had to work on?
I don't think I was outgoing. My memory of myself was more shy and insecure than outgoing. But what I did come to learn kind of in college through a roast, and once I started to really pay attention to how people saw me, which is the key, is how people see you versus how you see yourself, right? Once I started to really see how people saw me, I realized that actually people thought of me as very outgoing, very bubbly, very kind of like jubilous and joyful and fun to be around. But I didn't necessarily feel that way.
Ooh, this is fodder for some good questions down the line, for some great questions down the line, because I love this. I can relate in particular to this personality type because I do see that I feel that similarly in myself, and I'm sure so many others can as well. And I love the point you make about how the way that people perceive you is often quite differently than your internal view of yourself. So, okay, so you saw yourself as being very shy and maybe perhaps introverted. I love that you mentioned you read the room. So quiet doesn't necessarily mean anything other than gives you a lot more time to really observe and take in information. Did you, were you always into physical fitness and sports? Was that something that naturally evolved over time because you had so much of your childhood was like playing with other kids and in houses, and you had the park, as you mentioned, close by?
I wasn't really into physical fitness necessarily. I think I just needed a little bit of an outlet. Like in high school, I needed to get out of the house a bit. I needed things to do that I could call my own. And so that's sort of what happens. Sports weren't opportunities as much just because of where I went to high school. I went to the Bronx High School of Science, which was a school you had to test into, and it was a further away. So you had to travel to, and the community wasn't really there because it was from the 5 boroughs. So I really didn't have a lot of opportunity by the way of sports teams, yet I knew that some of my other friends were, staying active or staying in shape. I had one particular friend that I came to learn later had a lot of eating disorder type of issues. And she was always talking about, keeping the weight off and like staying active from that standpoint. And so I guess it was just kind of an idea that I was supposed to be doing something like that too. My parents did not model it, by the way, short of walking. My mother was like a healthy eater, but not active at all. And my father, not a healthy eater and not active at all. So, so I didn't get it from them at all. But I think it was more just wanting an outlet and wanting something. And it felt good, so I got involved in step aerobics classes and went to the gym with a friend, and we did the whole like student membership thing, in Manhattan. And that's kind of how it all started for me. I liked the dynamic of group fitness, and I liked, the music. I liked how it focused my mind. I liked how it made me feel good, and I liked doing it in the community. And so it got started from there.
That's so fun. I remember, Zumba was really big for a little while, but before that, like the step aerobics were just so much fun. And I remember like, I've always loved being active, and like, I grew up at like the time that Taibo was like starting to become really big, but it's not quite the same as stepping into a class setting, like you said, with a friend, or even just within the community. And you feel the energy of the room, especially when you have like a great group of people who are really excited about it, or really great instructors instructor, it really changes the game as to how enthusiastic you are about what you're doing and creating that physical outlet. New York is also a city that's built for commuting. I mean, it's built for people to be able to walk around, like leisure in parks. They have like the squares and everything, whereas Los Angeles and some other cities, but Los Angeles especially, is not structured that way. Did you feel growing up, I mean, you mentioned your parents weren't particularly active, but because there's that component of being able to walk or, take the subway, is that something that's like naturally ingrained in you as a part of just needing to be able to move from place to place, or not at all?
Well, I think another interesting point that you bring up about the city and the parks and all of that. Well, to tie it all in, I enjoy walking and being active. In fact, I was in New York last week, and all I wanted to do was walk the streets, and that's a really good form of fitness, by the way. It's totally a good form of fitness. Just staying active, walking with somebody, looking around, being on, listening to your podcast, which I actually did while I was walking. These are all, it's healthy. It's wonderful. It's great. There's no downside to walking. Okay, maybe it's not cardio training, maybe it's not strength training, but like there's nothing bad about that. But this comes up a lot because I do advocacy for the fitness industry kind of at the government level. And it's just about making sure that people understand that when you go to a group fitness class or where you go into a studio, or even if you do the typo in your house, like there's an element of programming and there's an element of accountability that is created that goes further beyond walking the city streets or going to the city parks and recreation and things like that. And why I bring it up is because that would come up in conversations at government level. They're like, well, we have all of these parks. Why do you need the fitness industry? Who cares about it? And the answer is because people are feeling sad. They're feeling lonely. They need a smile when they show up. Like they need a pep up. They need a little, they need answers too. They need instructions. So I'm not feeling so well today. Should I really work out? I just had a baby. Can I work out? Is this something that's safe for me? Is it not? Is it too soon to restart after an injury? All those types of things. So I think that, that's kind of what I really thrived on over the course of time as I got more involved in the fitness community, is like giving people like a home from a community standpoint, but also a really good experience that ends the answers that they need in the program they need to want to keep going and want to keep doing it.
I love that so much because I think it's really validating to the experience of humans being communal animals. Exactly what you said, where at the government level, we're looking at parks and recreation and saying, well, it's all there. So why? So what? So what's the next step? And you bring a really poignant point to the forefront, which is just that we really do need that community aspect. As a person who's so passionate about these things, did you got started with like the step aerobics classes, and that's where you found something that you really liked. Was it at that point that you knew like, okay, I'm going to go to school for this. I'm going to devote my career to this. How did you start to create that shift and turn your life in that direction?
Well, so I was actually extremely intimidated by it. And I was in school for business. And I worked in business for many years and had a fitness side hustle thereafter. So I was not actually thinking that this was something that was like built for me to do the fitness industry necessarily or be a fitness instructor, which I was in my early years. I don't teach anymore, but I didn't think it was for me necessarily because I didn't really have the confidence, quite honestly. And so I would be taking classes, and I had a boyfriend who challenged me in college, and that's kind of the story, and I stick to it. And it was essentially that I was like, these classes aren't good. Like they're not in college. Like they're not like the guy that teaches in Manhattan that I really like. And he's like, well, it can't be rocket science. Why don't you just become an instructor? And I was like, I will show you. I was like, can I? I don't know. Because you feel like standing up in front of the room, that's a lot. And so I ended up deciding to become an instructor, primarily with the goal of teaching a better step class. Step aerobics is actually really hard to teach. The fitness industry in general, teaching is hard. I mean,
Yeah.
you need a program, you need the counting as far as step. You also need really thick skin, and you need to manage everything that's going on in the room, from the temperature to people coming in late to, it's a lot. To people who need help, to people who can't follow what you're doing, to the mics not working, and all of these types of things. So I ended up becoming an instructor kind of as a side hustle, and it really helped shape my personality. Like, I saw just my ability to like liven people up and to carry a room. And but again, it was a side hustle. It was like kind of my passion, fun job. And I had a 9-to-5 day job. And then that would end and I would go to teach, and it was like my break, because you're just so focused. And it was always like, and you get paid to work out,
And you were having fun, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was having a great time. So meeting a lot of people, traveling from, location to location to teach. Yeah.
So was this still just aerobics, or were you teaching different types of fitness at this time?
Yeah, all sorts of things at that point for all of the top gyms in New York. So for Equinox and Crunch, and so spinning classes and trampoline classes and, body sculpt, and this person didn't show up. So can you just teach a core class and all those things? And then I started traveling for it. So I taught, at resorts, and I was on some infomercials and in some fitness videos. And when I did that, I realized like everyone's an actress. They're all so beautiful. Like, why am I doing this?
As your glowing hair with like your beautiful eyes and your flowing hair and your skin. How did you, as somebody that is self-proclaimed shy, how did you feel stepping into the room for the first time as a teacher? And like, how did you break out of that, idea of yourself to create the confidence around what you were doing? Because it sounds like it sort of started picking up and snowballing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that I probably felt prepared was key. Like, I think I took the time to really get prepared, especially in the early days when it was new. So, and by prepared, I mean like I knew my program. I listened to my music on the way there. So I was like in the vibe. I knew my counting, and I knew where I was going, like those types of things. I also had a lot of support. My friends loved that I was doing this. And as I mentioned to you, I have some friends since when I'm 5 years old, and they were generally around in those years. So I remember one friend who barely has ever worked a day in her life. Like maybe one day, this was the day, was there with me for my first ever like 6:30 a.m. class that was in Harlem when we lived in Gramercy Park. It's like they were just there to support me, which felt really nice. And yeah, I think so. I felt prepared. And then once you start getting that positive reassurance, it fuels you, like, oh, I did pretty good. I woke up one morning to go warm up a walkathon, and it was down, and they just asked me, like the gym asked me, we're doing this media event, we go down and handle it. And I went down there, and it was at sunrise. And so it was very dark when we walked in, and it was on the pier, like down by South Street Seaport Pier, whatever it's called. And I remember saying to the crowd, like, okay, we're all going to warm up and take a deep breath in. And, you're just thrown into this thing on the stage with the mic. And I put my hands up, and they were like, okay, move to the left. And I looked out in front, and I was like, whoa, how many people? Like, and it was 3,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, whoa. I had no idea. So I think I got thrown into a couple of those types of settings too, and was always just fine with it. And, it becomes like a snowball effect that I feel more and more confident just by doing these things.
Yeah. Just by experiencing it and realizing that you can get through it. That's so great. I love that you had a community around you of people that were showing up. It's really nice whenever you're starting something new to have at least one person in your corner that you know of. So, when you're physically teaching a class and literally going into a room that you've never walked into before, but having like a person you can make eye contact with, that had to feel so validating.
Yeah.
As you were doing this as your side hustle, what was your day job like?
Very chill. So that was good. And I had a lot of confidence there. Yeah. I was in the publishing industry for a couple of years, and then I was in New York City tourism for a couple of years. And yeah, this was a side hustle. I had gone to a like a seminar about finding the life you love and living the life, finding the work you love and loving the work you do, or that idea. And I think this is huge for anybody who's just like up and coming, trying to figure out what they want to do in the world. And the notion was like, here's a piece of paper and here's all different ideas of things. Circle the ones that mean a lot to you, and then let's figure out a way to make that kind of your career. And so the things on it weren't the typical, accounting or legal or anything like that. It was more like music and people and exercise and photography. And so the notion was like, if you love events, love photography, and love fashion, you should be, a fashion photographer for Fashion Week, like those types of things. So like angle more into kind of the job function from what would keep you excited about it. And so through that, I recognized that I really wanted to find a way to bring kind of my business acumen to my fitness passion, because being in the fitness environment was really inspiring to me. Like I loved seeing people come in that were brand new, that were scared, didn't know what they were doing, or the people that were really kinds of like established at it and knew what they were doing, going after it. And I just loved the whole kind of like, you walk in and glad you're there. We're all motivating each other to be here. And then you walk out and you feel really good. So I loved the community aspect that really brought in. And I wanted that more kind of in my life. Like I wanted to keep creating that for people and watching them feel better. And, I saw a lot of like emotional health stories. I saw a lot of people that were suffering from addiction that switched over to exercise, or that felt very isolated, that came for the community or that weren't healthy and, got healthy because they were told they needed to, or were scared to turn out unhealthy like a parent, or, like all of those different motivations. I really liked helping people through those motivations. So I wanted that from like a passion standpoint for like every day, like wake up to help these people do those things. But I was more of a business person. Like I didn't want to teach classes forever. I wanted to like create the business and create the community. And so ultimately I decided that I was going to create my own brand because that was going to bring it all together. And then I launched Row House.
So exciting to hear the trajectory of it. So how did Row House is a very specific type of workout. I would love to hear a little bit more about how you found that, how you decided that was going to be like the niche you started out in, and like where you found your resources, and just how this started to formulate from idea to fruition.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful question, and it's a completely accurate acknowledgement that it's a very niche workout, a niche concept. And I think there were a couple of different things at play. Number one, a lot of my colleagues and my peers in the New York City scene were starting the boutique fitness kind of craze, like a little before 2010, around the time of SoulCycle and Flywheel. And so everybody was getting involved in this. Barry's had grown by then. Barry's was not started then. It was started early, but Barry's Bootcamp. So like a lot of different concepts were kind of growing, and those were my peers. And so it felt like, if I wanted to do one, there was one to be done. Right. And cycling really was having its heyday, and runners were, running, but like it comes to a point where it's a little hard to run, and cycling isn't necessarily giving you the body you want, etc. So there was a feeling out there that we needed another form of cardio. But the fear was that rowing had been done a couple of times, had been tried a couple of times. But the problem is it's really hard to learn because you don't learn rowing just like you learn bicycling. So we looked at it and we're just kind of like, I think that this can be done. It was like almost a cocky move. It's
like a challenge that you wanted to.
Yes. And so that's what happens. And really, it was a wonderful experience. I had been working in New York City in the brands, in tourism, and selling the brands to the world and all. And I had learned so much just about driving a brand and everything, that I really looked at it as like, how can we create a lot of buzz? How can we drive a lot of intrigue? And much less about the modality. Like, of course, you have to explain the benefits of the modality, but how can we get people like lured into, even the culture of the sport of rowing, which I came to learn about and everything. So there was a lot there to really sink your teeth into. And that's but it wasn't for rowers, it was for fitness goers. And the main groups that it solved to were groups that weren't getting things necessarily in other fitness experiences. One of the main groups was the weight loss group, people with a lot of weight to lose. And it's hard to lose weight when you're running or even cycling. It's a little awkward, but on a rowing machine, you're extremely powerful and you can drop weight really, really quickly because it's low impact and low risk of injury. And then also kind of risk averse athletes or injured athletes, people with knee issues, ankle issues, foot issues, that those people who are like naturally exercising versus the others, which are like first time exercising or coming off the couch, can do really, really well. So we were able to kind of tap into these different markets that we felt like needed a solution. And that's really why, I focused in on growing the brand.
I really enjoy hearing this. I am one of those few. I feel like there's two camps of fitness goers, and I've always been active my whole life, but I come from the non-cardio loving camp where like you couldn't pay. My husband like is one of those guys, like he was D1 like as a soccer player, so he could run for ages and like he loves it, whereas I'm like, I can do a sprint, like give me like 250 meters and like that's all I'm good for. But so to have an alternative like this is it's a very unique and wonderful thing to have available to people like me who are just like, you're not getting me on a treadmill. Or frankly, like I've I had a Peloton and everything, but at a certain point, like all cardio just, you have to really keep a certain group of people interested in it, and I feel like with rowing, one of the great things like you kind of mentioned is like it requires not a lot of impact, but works out these massive muscle groups in your body. So I've never actually, it's really interesting that you're saying you could lose weight, more effectively doing it. And that's probably part of the reason why.
Yes, 100%.
So fun. Yeah. I'm also very excited because there's one opening up in my neighborhood very soon.
Oh, how exciting. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, so I feel very fortunate to have had a wonderful team, really great community, like culture that we created from the members to the staff to, the corporate team over the time to it ultimately became franchised. I kind of saw that all through. And, the fitness industry had a very hard time during COVID, very hard time during the pandemic. And so there were a lot of challenges through many brands, but especially young brands like Row House had a lot of challenges. But now I've spent more and more time just in just the industry in general, because what you're saying, like there are people who gravitate towards one thing versus another thing, all of the world of the cardio. I love cardio. I want to sweat. All of the world of bar Pilates, I don't want to sweat, but I want movement. The dance world, and then you take that and push that to the side. And then you have everything going on in the med spa wellness space and the cryos of the world and all of that too, which is so interesting. So I spend a lot of time just across the industry helping brands that are early grow, because we did that. We started very small, watched a lot of growth, 1 studio, 2 studios, figure out how to get profitable, figure out how to create a community, figure out how to get your clients to show up, and figure out how to make sure they come back and how to make sure they bring their friends. Like there's an art to all of this. It's not just if you build it, they will come, and then figure out how to do that in another location and not just assume it's going to happen like it happens in the first location, and create the team culture and reward the team for growing the business and all of those things. So I've been really, really, really enjoying getting out amongst the industry, helping other, modalities. I've been involved in something with Pilates now. I was with P-Vault for a while. They had a Jennifer Aniston megaphone, and the whole idea was like Jennifer Aniston did it, so everybody's going to do it. And, not many brands have that, right? And so how do we kind of go and create like this magical thing in the 4 walls or in the digital experience or something, but make sure other people want to actually do it over and over and over. So I love that now, because it's just so many people are motivated by so many different things. So exercise and daily rituals are just not one size fits all at all.
I really appreciate that take on it too, because it's, fitness at this point, it's kind of like pick your player, right? Like there's so many different things out there that for especially a young company, I can imagine it's incredibly daunting. When I listen to your story and when I take into account everything that you've shared about leading up to your journey in the fitness world and how you got started, there's a lot of planning involved. And it sounds like a lot of research and a lot of preparation in order to create this sense of confidence and to just create like a framework for you to be able to be successful. I think that's so impressive. And it's clearly, part of your secret sauce, and like the way your eyes light up when you talk about like taking this from your experience with Row House to all kinds of different modalities across the industry. What are some of your favorite parts of growing the businesses like these? And do you mentioned like the struggles that you had with Row House with COVID. Can you talk a little bit about the flip side of that as well?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Something that's in my mind is, because you ask wonderful questions, is regarding just being aspirational. So I think a lot of the industry in general, like if you just think of where do I spend my time and where do I spend my time for fitness or wellness, it's in an aspirational setting, right? Like it has to be in a motivational setting, but it's certainly in an aspirational setting, in that if you walk in and it's dirty, or if you walk in and the instructor just doesn't look like they care, or if the music is bad and it's like barely on or anything like that, then the package isn't aspirational, and it's not like, you need to want to aspire to be a part of it so that you value it. And so I think that that's one kind of key thing here, that unfortunately, shifting over to the question about COVID and the pandemic, like the fitness industry was kind of deemed dirty and negative, not exciting and aspirational and healthy and what you should be doing. It was like where you shouldn't be going because disease was there. And so it was very hard for a lot of businesses to kind of really bounce back for that. Because again, going back to kind of like the stories from what happens within, whether it's a gym setting or a studio setting, what happens from within is, we all know as like the tip of the spear, whether it's the instructor or the desk person making a friends with the client or the owners, we all know how much we're changing lives. And so that's kind of the relevant story, right? Like that's why we're here. Like that's what we do every day. And to feel like, oh, you're just getting people sick and this is like a voodoo sort of place, that was really hard, I think, on people emotionally, but certainly on business from a business impact standpoint too. So there was closures, and we were talking about it the other day. somewhere in the like 30 to 40% range of, businesses that closed. It was one of the most hardest hit industries than any others. I mean, restaurants got bailout money, fitness industry really didn't. So there was a good amount of closures. There was also a good amount of consolidation. So, some of the brands just got absorbed into others, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a lot of players now in the wellness space. And it's a good thing because it means hopefully that more Americans are getting healthy.
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift. And I think one of the incredibly difficult things about that time in 2020, when everything, really hit the fan, was that sense of community just got kind of shredded to bits. It was like now all of a sudden we, regardless of what the intentions or what we knew or didn't know at the time, it was like it became very unsafe, quote unquote, unsafe to be so close together when we had no idea what was going on. And I can just imagine, after all of the careful preparation and building something so dear to you and like getting started with this very physical, like indoor activity, it probably took so much to pivot. Clearly, Row House endured. What were some of like the major things that you were able to implement in order to ensure the longevity of the business?
Yeah, listen, it was really, really hard. I mean, I think this is where it goes back to, for whatever you're going to do, you have to pay attention to the business side. So as passionate, as hopeful as we are, as much as we enjoy, the fitness side, the business side is super important. And we talk about this all the time in the industry because it's like so many people, they're a trainer and they open a studio or something like that. And then you faced with the business and you're like, oh my gosh, how do you handle all this? So
it's a whole other monster.
Yeah. Like people that I really enjoy kind of helping walk through it, because I didn't know it. I had to figure it all out myself too. Right. So I think when it came down to it, we couldn't just keep everybody on payroll. Right. Like we had to really shrink the business. And that was really hard. I was managing the studios in New York that I had. There were like 5 of them at the time with this group. And it was like 65 employees. And we had to let go of all of those people. And that was a culture that it took years to create. And cared deeply about everybody's families and everything. And, people had to then, uproot and go back home to live with parents and all sorts of things because of all of the insecurity. And it felt terrible to have to do that, but it was the only way because of those problems. And then by the same token, you had kind of like these expenses, like the rent and the issues with the landlord that you had to deal with and walk through. So I think all in all, just making quick decisions, even if they're hard, are super important for a business. I saw a lot of people making judgments too, like how could they? Luckily, I didn't face a lot of that, but I know a lot of people did face it. But I think that the way around that is by communicating to people what you're going through a lot of the time because they just don't know. And also by honestly just like being a good person and developing relationships.
It's crazy how far that goes sometimes. It's actually so refreshing to hear you say, because business, I think when somebody who is not in business listens to podcasts such as these, or they think about it as this generalized idea, you don't automatically think about it as being transparent, regardless of what the industry is. It's kind of like this big nebulous idea of like business is business, right? But to hear you say part of that can be being transparent about what you're going through and being honest about what you're going through, especially in those moments where you have to make the most difficult decision, because I love that when you talk about this, you are talking about running this means you're creating an internal community where you have somebody with a family or rent or this or that. And it's not just like even the hard decision is just ripping off a Band-Aid. It's like, you make the hard decision even though you know that you're making a significant change to somebody else's life, and then you are honest with them about it. I think that's like probably the only noble way that you could go around being a leader, like in the truest form. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's so great to hear, as hard as
Yeah,
that
it's
time sounds.
and it's definitely hard to play with other people's like livelihoods and to kind of like promise people, I'm going to support you, I have your back, and then to have to let people go. But that is a good lesson. Slow to hire, quick to fire is something I've grown to understand more and more over time. Like slow to hire, you need to make sure you find the right culture and people, and then quick to fire. I've always taken really my time, almost too much time. I've seen a lot of business leaders take a lot of time. But what you end up finding out is that once you get a sense that it's not working, and once you're sure it's not working, it's better for everybody to move on quickly, because it's better for your team, for your culture, for your business to find the new path forward. And it's better for them because they don't get pulled down. And in a lot of instances, I've seen people that it's just not a good match here, but they'll go and in a moment find another solution elsewhere that's better for them and flourish. So it's just a place of like continued growth and evolution. Like sometimes, it's not always a family. And some of these businesses, like fitness business, it feels like family. It's family. But then once you're going to really grow, it's going to become more corporate. It's going to be more about the numbers and all those things. So those shifts are hard for people to handle. So yeah.
Yeah. You talk a lot about culture, which I get the sense is something that's very important to you. And I think part of the reason that really comes across is because you have done such an incredible job of taking things that you're very passionate about and building a career out of it. You definitely you've created such a beautiful balance between, like you said, your business acumen and making those difficult decisions and keeping the business decisions at the forefront. But I think it's really informed by what is important to you outside of work, fitness, community, helping other people, like listening to their stories. As you run your business and as you create that external community, what are some of the most important parts that you found to be exemplary of like the cultures that you strive to create within your businesses?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question because each business really has a very different culture. And said slightly different, I love brands. I'm a brands aficionado. I just love the cultures behind brands and the values behind brands. And so in working with a lot of big brands, fitness brands, non-fitness brands, the brands of New York City, the brands of Rosenberg, the brands of P-Volve, the brands of recently or former, like so many brands, you end up really seeing kind of the values or further defining. Like I've worked with people to further define this. Who is the community that you're trying to reach? Who are the target customers that really matter here? By the way, is that enough to fill a huge community, or should we be welcoming in another different group? And that's kind of how your culture is born, right? And so that's how, SoulCycle back in the day, you walk into SoulCycle and it's a vibe. It's a vibe because it was built on certain brand values with certain people that attracted to that vibe. And you look at back in the day, Flywheel, if people are familiar with that brand, but it was a competitive take on SoulCycle, no longer around, and it was more of a leaderboard setting where SoulCycle was a party on the bike, like two totally different cultures based on different brand values, competition versus party on the bike, And so the people who would work within it, the clients that would want to be a part of it, totally different. So for me, I don't really look at brands necessarily as like what ticks my boat. I look at it more as like who is creating this and who are they trying to attract, and is this a great business market opportunity? You know what I mean? So that's to say that like there are so many different places out there for anybody, right? And wellness brands, non-wellness brand, restaurant experience, like anything, like And it goes back to kind of like the little girl inside of you. What are you looking for in this world? Like, are you looking to sit in this type of experience, you know, even a shopping experience? Like, are you looking to go through a secondhand shop and just kind of like rustle through the things? Or are you looking to go to like Neiman's and, you know, be a lady who lunches and have a glass of wine while you shop through like the highest priced items? Like, though, all of those different experiences, I think, are ultimately like just where you feel the most comfortable. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach consumers and make, or people, everyday people, and make them feel like they're a part of what we have to offer.
It's so exciting because, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things that we like doing is extracting these major themes. And one of the very first things you said when we started talking, especially about who you were getting started in the world and in your life, was that like young Debra was somebody that other people saw as being very outgoing, but you saw yourself as being somebody who read the room. And it's really cool to hear how this has all played out and how you've been able to really create this beautiful career of literally reading the room. And like your answer of like, it's not what I want. It's being able to look at, you know, what this particular business or group of people is trying to create. And so you've really taken some of your, you know, those deeply set values, like even from childhood, and like utilized it to create this career.
No, it's interesting I say that. Yeah. Because, I think it's true, right? Like one of the best qualities is to listen before you speak. So to read the room would imply that I listen before I speak, which is not necessarily always the case, actually. But you're right. No, I even in the fitness experience, I would have a lot of people come in and I'd say, so what did you see in there? Like, meaning I saw an older person, a younger person. I saw two girls that came in together. Like what are these dynamics that create this community? And people be like, I don't know. It's like dark.
It is really fun getting feedback from different people because it's wild how each person just really has a different way of experiencing things. And, you know, the way that I experience something could be wildly different from like the way my sister experiences something, or like my neighbor, whatever, my husband, wildly different. So how, you know, you've done all of this and, you know, now you're in Newport Beach. You live in a place that's very different from New York City by your own admission, and you're a mom. And one of the things that I really enjoyed, especially when I was reading a little bit more about you and, you know, doing a little light digging to, you know, as research before we sat down, was that that's something that seems so important and, not just driving, but like formative to you. It seems like it's something that has really helped inform the way you practice business and the way that you remain organized. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience, you know, doing everything that you do as a busy mom with 3 kids, you know, and how you make that all work and how you balance it.
Sure. Yeah. I think that my kids have an appreciation for my work, which is nice. And they have an appreciation kind of for seeing the growth of a brand that was created, you know, by their parents, actually, by me and Eric, their dad. So they can see all of that and they definitely have an appreciation for it. And they definitely know that it's hard work and that it's not necessarily 9-to-5 type work. So we're no longer near where our studios were, but they were, as they were growing up around the studios, they knew like sometimes we had to go down to drop something off on a weekend or pop in to say hello to people on a weekend. And my one son would answer the phone and take the photo that he was like working the desk, you know, and so clean the rowers. And so I think they have kind of a sense of like the entrepreneur hustle. But at the same time, I've been very cautious not to make it everywhere that they are. The work from home thing is obviously hard because it's in front of them a lot. but they do have a good amount of respect for, if I'm on calls or if I'm not here, like it's because I need work time because that's important to our family. And so I make as much of an effort as possible. And it is hard for, entrepreneurs or people who are self-employed to really step away from things, but I make as much of an effort as possible to step away for specific chunks of time and be very present for them. At the same time, they want to say like, well, don't be on your phone because you should watch me playing basketball, which is fine until then they're like, well, did my friend call back? Did my da-da-da-da? Am I going to meet the person here? And then I'm like, you just told me to get off my phone and now I have to get on my phone again. And I don't know what to, so there's always going to be a little bit of a tug and pull with regards to like distractions because we're so wired, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not really the type of person that could just put my phone down and like step away from it for large periods of time. But I am very present for my kids. I definitely want to be there for them. I definitely, want to spend as much time with them in their growing years as I possibly can. And I think just generally I find a good enough amount of time for myself to do my own wellness and to sleep well and, find those things during the day so that I feel good. I'm healthy, I'm focused and, and I can give them the time they need and I can give my work the time it needs and my family the time it needs. But we could always have more time in the day, right?
Yeah. The one thing I would wish if I had a superpower, it would just be to extend the day by like an extra 24 hours. How old are your kids?
Add a day to the week. That would be nice, like a day of rest.
Yes. An extra day of rest. Maybe just one day like a couple extra days, one of which would just be solely devoted toward like the errands, like get it all done in one day. And then everything else could just be you time or you and family time. How old are your kids?
8, 13, and then 21.
Oh my gosh. So fun. Totally different stages of life.
Totally different stages of life.
Are they all boys?
No. Boy, girl. The oldest is a girl in game design. So she's going to be graduating, looking for her first job in game design. She's a little bit more of a perfectionist. I'm a little bit more of a doer. We talk about that a lot, right? Just people who
absolutely.
Like go and you figure it out as you go versus I was talking to her about it today. I'm like, it doesn't have to be perfect before you send out your portfolio to potential jobs. Like we just have to get moving.
Sometimes it's nice to make those little mistakes. I mean, obviously, like you said, planning is really important, but I think especially at that age, sending things out and then learning from like the little mistakes that you have helps you titrate and get better and create your own algorithm for success. So, but I'm sure your daughter is at no loss for inspiration or support with you as her mom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, it was a point that she said she was glad she got something out and she got feedback that they actually liked it a lot. She didn't feel it was good. So I was saying that's really useful too.
Yeah.
Like you didn't wait till you got it perfect because maybe you saw it from a different perspective as you got the feedback. It's okay to get feedback. It's okay to say to people, you're not 100% there yet. You're not quite done, but what do you think about it right now? I think that's okay.
That's a great point too. That's really great because just like you're talking about transparency with like your employees, I think that as an employee, providing that same respect or providing that same level of communication is just as significant and can be really, really helpful. So I could continue talking and chatting and picking your brilliant brain for hours, but I obviously can't do that because you have so many different things to attend to.
But it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation.
Yes, it's been so great. I would love to sort of transition into our Fast Five, which is where I just ask fun 5 questions, kind of shake it off, and then we'll end with a final, a little bit more ruminative of a question. We'll wrap up if you're ready.
Yep.
Okay, so you have many different businesses. My first Fast Five is rowing or Pilates or anything else.
Yoga. hot yoga.
Ah, okay. Morning non-negotiable.
Espresso. Right
Love
away.
it. Same. What is your evening routine?
Just go to bed. I'm tired.
Do you have a favorite pre or post workout snack?
No, I don't.
And then lastly, do you have any guilty pleasures?
Chocolate peanut butter cups and rosé.
Together?
No.
I was going to say that's an interesting combination. And the last question we ask all of our guests is, what is one quality you had as a teen or a young adult that you didn't necessarily appreciate at the time, but now you look back at it and you're really happy you've been able to carry that throughout the course of your career or your life?
I think actually you kind of hit the nail on the head with it. It was that I read the room, but I read the room more from an insecurity standpoint. Like I didn't feel good enough in the room, or I felt a little compared, like I should be more like her, or what,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worthy of being in this room. It was like a self-worth type thing. But you're right that what I took from that was, in the end, I feel very confident in myself. And then I can read the room to navigate the room. And I've taken qualities that I want forward in myself, or I can share them with my children or my friends. I can talk through things with people. I could give great advice to others as I've seen other things play out, be a good listener. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way, but I think as a kid, it was overwhelming. It was more of like an overwhelming self-worth thing. I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. And that's why I wasn't enjoying the room. That's why I was watching the room, but later in life, it's helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad you've kept it. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you and just learning from your journey and just hearing how you run your businesses. You are so brilliant and clearly very successful for a multitude of different reasons. And I'm just so excited to be able to share this wealth of knowledge that you are with our audience. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I enjoy listening to your podcasts, and I'm going to start listening to all of the others that I haven't listened to yet, because the questions that you ask, it's just such great nuggets of information. So
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
That's the goal, is to keep sharing these little golden truths with everybody. So, and you have so many. Before we go, is there anything you're working on that you want to share with our audience in terms of like a particular business that you're working on that you're excited about, or fitness trends you want people to keep an ear out for?
Interesting. Well, I am thinking about launching another brand again. So the best way to keep in touch with me is really on LinkedIn. For the LinkedIn users, Debra Strougo. And I would love to tell you guys all about it once I do it, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet. It's a lot to go forward. So we'll see.
Exciting. Okay. Well, we will link your LinkedIn in our show notes. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you. Have a great day.
And that's our show. If you liked what you heard today, please like, subscribe to, follow, and share Meet Bridget with your circle. The best way to help our work here is to rate and review our podcast. We're listening and constantly working to build something helpful for you. Catch you next time.